Hello, boys and girls. Mrs. Stowski back here with you. And today with Benchmark, we're going to be looking again across different pieces of text. But we're not just going to be looking at the opinion pieces that you that you read this week. We're going to go back in time to Unit 5, Week 1. And in there, you read an editorial. And that editorial was too many statistics, too few facts. So it's been a while since we saw this because it was way before spring break even. So let's reread it together really quickly. As I read through this, I'm going to look specifically at what questions were asked in here because the author of this had a lot of questions about the different ideas that were being presented. So here we go. The question before Hopeville is, do we want solar or natural gas power? We need more information to make a decision. Last night's meeting did not help. People just threw around facts and statistics. They caused more confusion than clarity. We need a group to study both sides of the issue in depth. Some people said solar power is too expensive. Their only evidence was the Mesa Palm solar plant. That plant was built 5 years ago. And it is just one example. Have they looked at others? There's a question she's asking. Do they know why Mesa Palms was so expensive? We need to look more closely. Surely new solar power technologies exist that are less expensive. Plus, we don't need a power plant for 100,000 homes. Half the size is all Hopeville needs. Some people said natural gas causes too much pollution. But is that true? I've heard conflicting evidence. Ava Pierce said electricity production was responsible for over 70% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2012. What percentage of those emissions is due to natural gas? Again, asking questions about these different ideas. In my opinion, we cannot yet make an informed decision about what kind of power plant to build. That is because we do not have enough information. We should study the facts carefully. Then we can decide whether to choose solar or natural gas energy. So notice in this text, you have the author asking some questions. People were debating, what's better, solar power, natural gas? Now, obviously, these two things are not transportation solutions, right? But they are something that people are debating between, and it does deal with green technology. But this author asked questions. Have they looked at others? Do they know why Mesa Palms was so expensive? Is the fact true? What percentage of those emissions is due to natural gas? Okay, she's asking very specific questions. She wants more information. So your task today is to think like she was thinking, but you're going to be using your benchmark things from this week. So when you go into benchmark, Unit 5, Week 3, lesson for Thursday, you're going to be looking at an assignment that is like this. And I'm going to go to present mode. And so when you see this, you're going to notice that it mentions in week 1, you read too many statistics, too few facts. That's what I just read out loud to you by Rosaria Cruz. She had questions about the claims people made about solar power and natural gas. What kinds of questions do you think she would ask the writers who shared their 4 opinions in this week's text? So, if you got to be Rosaria, put your head inside her mind. What might she ask? I'd like for you to come up with questions for opinions 1, 2, and opinion 3. Okay? So opinion 1, solar cars are the best choice for the future. That was the opinion of that article. If she were to read that article, what questions might pop into her mind? And notice it says questions with an S. So you should be able to come up with 2 questions that she might ask about opinion 1. Then opinion 2, using public transportation is a good way to reduce emissions. What 2 questions do you think she'd want to ask about using public transportation? And finally, opinion 3, people should walk or bike to get places instead of driving. What 2 questions would she ask in regards to people having to walk or bike places. Once you've done that part, down here, it asks you, how did the authors use evidence differently? So if you're really looking at the ways in which our authors this week were using evidence, okay, how are they using it differently? Because obviously, some of them have the same things, right? We looked at that yesterday. What was the same? What was different? This question's a little bit farther than that. It's not just what was different between the opinions, it's how is the evidence being used. So if you think about the author of Opinion 4, for example, that person really thought that you should use a combination, right? We should use some different kinds of cars, we should use public transportation, and we should also have people biking and walking more. And if we're using all those things, then that would be the best solution. So they gave positive things about all of the evidence. But if you think back to Opinion 1 really felt solar cars were the best, right? After all, it states it right here on our paper. So they're arguing that solar's the best. They put in evidence about hybrid cars, and they put in evidence about the plug-in ones, right? The battery operated where you have to plug them in. So why is it different? They both mention the cars, but how was it used differently? Were they used in the same way? No, right? Because the one author in Opinion 4, they're pointing out, hey, look at this. If you use a hybrid car, you're using less fossil fuels and you're creating fewer emissions. That's a good thing. Whereas the one for solar power, they're pointing out the fact that you're using less fossil fuels and putting out fewer emissions as a negative because you're still putting out the emissions. So one has a more positive vibe, one has kind of a negative feel to it. So that's the kind of thing they're talking about. Now, if you type that in right here, that's great. That means you were paying attention to me. Would I like to see you put something else also? Yes, I would. And so would Mr. Ford and Mrs. Jansen. Okay, so really think about how that evidence is being used differently between the different opinions you read this week. Then at the bottom, it's going to ask you to think about the different opinions you've read. Choose 2 points that the authors all agree on. So there's little circles. I know normally you would put a little X or a check mark, but you're just going to drag those little red circles to where they need to go. And you're going to choose 2, which is why there's 2 circles. And you have to think all 4 opinions, all of them, what did they agree on? Okay? When you're reading, if you need to look back at too many statistics, too few facts, there's that article. I read it out loud to you. If you don't remember some of the things from Opinion 1, 2, and 3, you'll need to go back into the full text and look there. All right, boys and girls, good luck. I know you can do it.